My fellow Liberians, my name is Simeon Freeman. I'm the political leader of the Movement for Progressive Change. And this is the Simeon Freeman Show that is being conveyed on Capital FM, OK FM, Sky FM, and Banner FM, respectively. So 4 radio stations carry us live, you call that simulcast, on 4 radio stations in Monrovia. Plans are on our way to have additional radio stations in the rural parts of Liberia carrying this program, and to have an interpreter. The purpose of the show is to discuss the challenges of our country, look at the historical perspective of these challenges, and provide solutions that work for us. And so in every respect, our desire to be president is void of some of the approaches that have been used in the past, where we blame a sitting president, we blame a sitting government for all of Liberia's challenges. We think if we can together discuss our country, discuss the challenges of our country, we will be in a better position to transition our country as the case will be. Liberia is 140-something years old, and we're still bogged down with challenges that we should have overcome. Several years ago, we were better off than many of the big Asian tigers, South Korea, Singapore. What did they do right? What are we doing wrong? And the 2023 elections, we believe, is not about criticizing the existing administration. I think the 2023 election is about finding the right person for the job of transforming our country for a better Liberia. If we do not create a better Liberia, then we will have a serious challenge moving forward. And the 2023 elections is coming up at a very critical time in the history of global economics. There are several issues that we overlook. COVID came around 2019. It lasted till 2020. We all know that at the end of 2020, people were beating COVID away, thinking that it was all over. COVID lasted 2021. COVID is still in 2022. So there's one COVID is moving up to 3 years, challenging the global economy. During the period of COVID, many governments printed lots and lots and lots of money, especially countries in the West printed lots of money. In other African countries too, or other underdeveloped countries, lots of money was printed by the government to help either to eat businesses or to pay bills. So in every respect, it was hoped that once the epidemic was over, or the pandemic was over, then it would be time to mobilize most of the money that was printed. Sadly, immediately after, we're still dealing with COVID, but even during COVID, another global crisis hit. The proxy war, this war in Ukraine, where Ukraine is supported by the West, mainly America and Europe, and Russia, on the other hand, supported by her allies, and they're fighting on the battlefield. That has further exacerbated problems. Then you have other climate problems that are beginning to rear their very ugly head. You may not have followed, but the heat waves in Asia is massive. COVID is also beginning to be a serious issue in China again. Shanghai, new cases was discovered in other cities in China. So what then is probably going to happen? I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, But from all indications, we saw India ban the export of wheat when India felt that wheat prices would have gone up for all people as a result of the challenges around the world, since, in fact, the world could not get wheat from Ukraine and Russia. If China, for example, decides, well, the rice we have, we cannot export it, basically because we think it challenges it's going to create a problem for our population, it means Liberia will not get rice even if Liberia has money from China. If India does the same, it means Liberia will not get rice from India. There's a massive heat wave in India right now. India is running power cuts. India is running LNG power generators. And a lot of that LNG comes from Russia and other parts. Saudi Arabia have increased the price of those products to Asia, but not to Europe. So what that does is it puts pressure on domestic issues. Because in Liberia we have neglected and abandoned our domestic program to add value to our soil to grow food, it means that we may probably, even if we have money to buy rice, not have rice imported in Liberia for a while. So let's watch out on the horizon for some of these challenges. I'm telling you now so that you know the likelihood of such an occurrence is very high. So the issue of rice may be a problem. Also petroleum. Petroleum refineries have not been invested in the last couple of years around the world. And it's my understanding that it's a petroleum refinery in Liberia that may come online in another 2 months. If that does, then that's very good. But that would be a scratch on the back. We need more of that. So in every respect, the probability of us having rice issues in the next couple of months is likely. Let's hope the issues that we've talked about, the domestic issues happening in the countries from which those things are coming from, let's hope that they don't get so severe and they can be easily mitigated. If they are not mitigated and or solved in a relatively short period of time, then the likelihood of a protracted situation is very, very high. And so we are bringing it to the core so we can understand some of these issues. Before we go into the continuation of the economic discussion for Liberia, somebody asked a question. We'd like to answer the questions before we delve further. We'll be opening the line at 7:35. Right now the time is 7:09. We'll try to present within the limited time frame. You can call us, you can save these numbers and call us at 7:35 on 0770-000-754 or 0555-000-754. So those are the two numbers to call us on if you're within Liberia. Somebody asked about will we be willing to join the winning party to lead the country forward? Definitely. We're willing to support and work with any government for that matter that comes to power that needs our understanding of these issues. Willing to work with them, willing to structure the necessary documentation and paper and give the background so that Liberia wins. It's got nothing to do with me. Somebody said that we should run for the Senate, and if I'm not elected, I could run for the Senate so that these beautiful ideas could be implemented. The truth is, look, you've listened to me. These beautiful ideas that we've brought to the table, it's not one man that becomes president. It's not one man that makes himself president, but one man lifts himself and volunteers that he wants to be president. And I think if you are persuaded by the things we've said, then join the bandwagon. let's together in your own community, in your own camp, begin to mobilize people and to share the concepts and the things that we have talked about several on this show, the multiple topics we've dealt with, the different historical perspective, so that we all take responsibility for who becomes president. But if we say, well, I'm just one person, then we're not going to change it. If each person say, I'm just one person, and each of those one person do something differently, definitely we're going to have a change. Somebody is asking on Joe Saki was the main point of this discussion. So if you just join him, Mr. Saki, this is the Simeon Freeman show, and this discussion tonight, we're clearly looking at the barrel guns that's destroying our country, but we thought to give this background of some of the global issues that may create specific challenges in our country in the coming months. And so what we're doing here tonight, we're alerting the current administration and the current leadership to begin to take the requisite steps so that Liberia is not a victim of certain kind of shortages. So in Europe, what the guys are doing is they are trying to stock the tanks. They have large storage facilities, and they're trying to stock the tanks so that the storage capacity can take them a long way, even though they're being hindered, but they're trying to stock the tank. The question is, do we have significant resources and with significant warehouses to stock, say, 6 months supply of rice for Liberia, since in fact we depend on rice importation? Do we have capacity and storage to stock, say, 8 months supply of rice from the source countries, since in fact those source countries are now still selling rice? Or are we waiting until the situations in their country are further exacerbated, so much so that we will just be trying to find one shipment load of rice that will last for a month or two? That's where governments come in. So governments go to the vendors, like it's been done in Europe, and say, look, vendor, how much money you have and how long the quantity you're going to buy will last. Then what they do is, okay, we'll come and give you a short-term facility and bring in, say, 8 months supply of rice. We have significant warehouses who keep it because rice is a staple of our people. And if Vietnam or China or India decided they were not exporting rice in the coming months, that's going to be a serious problem, and it could lead to political uprising in our country. All right. So that's the point that we try to put forth tonight. Now, continuing with our discussion on the 3-barrel gun, we've expanded that 3-barrel gun to 5-barrel gun, where we've been able to discuss government expenditure. We've been able to discuss government expenditure. So government expenditure basically is one of the challenges, not just in Liberia, but across Africa, that is tearing down our growth as a nation. A lot of the choices that are made in our expenditure curve doesn't help growth in any way. No business goes to borrow money for the owner of that business to buy a new car, or for the owner of that business to buy new clothes, or for the owner of that business to build a house in anticipation of inflow. Every serious business that have the accounting infrastructure in order, what they do is they borrow money to reinvest the money. And they invest the money in ways in which they have something called return on investment, the ROI. They check the ROI to ensure that that thing invested in will give back the money. Throughout Africa, a lot of our investment is driven by political consideration. I'll give you an example. Several years ago, we built a road from just around 2014, we built a road from Monrovia to Ganta. That's a good piece of equipment. But we spent $264 million on that road. The truth of the matter is, what is being generated in Ganta in terms of the trade link between Ganta and Monrovia is not significant enough to generate even $10 million a year to pay for the road that is built on it, that pay for the road that was built. Let's turn it around. What if that $264 million borrow had been used to invest in the creation of, say up to 75 factories, major factories in the NEMA belt? What that would have done is that NEMA belt would have had businesses generating, say, $5 million a year, $10 million a year, $15 million a year. If you put the 75 businesses together, those 75 businesses put together, if they were together generating, say, let me just do the calculator here. If they were together generating, say we take a ratio of, say, $10 million a year times 75 businesses, it means that we'll be getting $750 million a year revenue from those businesses. Now, if you apply the kind of income tax rate we're looking at of about 15% over an per annum period, it means that the government of Liberia will be able to raise about $112,500,000 from businesses that have been financed by the government. And the way it works is not the government take the money and give it to business. No. You have where the private sector meets the public sector. So the government of Liberia takes the money and give it to the Central Bank of Liberia. The Central Bank of Liberia loans that money to the commercial banks with direct instruction to loan it to specific businesses, and those businesses will pay back over a 10 years period with a low interest rate. What that does is it creates businesses in certain areas. The question of who manages those businesses is a whole new discussion. What we can do, we can input the expertise to manage the business, but the ownership will be for the people of Liberia. All right? The ownership will be for not the people per se, but individuals. So you get 5 individuals that will own those businesses, and those 5 individuals, all right, become the owners of those businesses. But those 5 individuals do not run the businesses. They own it because they don't have the expertise to run it. Say you took 5 chiefs, and the 5 chiefs clearly had to run the business, own the business. Now you bring in an expertise, somebody from China, India, wherever, to be the CEO or the managing director. And you bring the financial controller from somewhere that works along with Liberians, and they run that business. So now you're going to have income, good revenue flowing to them. So if their profitability per annum is, say, 750 million, all right, then for the 75 industries that you would have created, so let's say you create an industry in the area of rice, you create an industry cassava, create an industry for chocolate, create an industry for sugar, create an industry for corn, multiple stuff. You can create multiple industries. Now you see, you will be able to target about $112 million. What do? It is in anticipation of this that you do the infrastructure development. This is what's killing not just Liberia, but Africa. African countries will go and borrow massive cash to build roads that go to places that bring nothing in return. And then what happens? And the same people start to suffer, even though the road is there, but how many cars on the road? How many cars you actually have on those roads, and what are they generating? One, you don't have a toll booth. That's one issue. Yes, you don't have a toll booth. Even if you had a toll booth, how much money is going to be charged? It means it's going to pay for itself over 25, 30, 40 years period. But be that as it may, if you connect commercial centers, if you put factories in Sino, if you put factories in Grand Cru, if you invest in factories in River G, factories in Maryland, and then you build the road from Maryland to Monrovia, it means that you're connecting productive centers in the southeastern region to a supply chain in Monrovia, and you also connecting that productive center to an export market. All right. So then you will have need to now resurrect the port of Greenville, where that entire productive chain can also export through the port of Greenville or through the port of Harper. If you run development that way, it's good. No business go and borrow money to for the owner to build a house. If you do that, it's going to lead to a collapse. So those are some of the things that's killing us. We collect money, and with the money that we collect, on the last show I read to you all of the monies that were borrowed, even to build Hotel Africa, we borrowed $9 million. To build the OAU place, to host the conference, we borrowed $5.6 million just to host the thing. To build that place, we borrow another $9 million. You see, all of this money that was borrowed, the OAU village, the OAU conference was not giving anything to Liberia. But we took a debt of $5.something million just to host the conference. Then we took a debt of $9 million just to host other African leaders. We took a debt of $9 million. After the OAU conference, we did nothing with the facility. Hotel Africa wasn't generating much. The villa basically were there. They weren't really generating much. And so they were not productive centers. We take loans sometimes for the wrong reasons. And when we spend this money, what is killing is expenditure mismanagement that's actually hurting us. So in every respect, those are some of the challenges that's at the heart of our underdevelopment. So several years later, we have taken so much debt. We take billions of dollars in debt. We invested in political development. We build roads into places that brings nothing back. Then, in the end, we have to overtax our people just to get the increased revenue to begin to pay the interest and a principal on the loans that have been borrowed. In many respects, this is a serious problem that the country have had, and this is something that has to be tackled through an administration that understands the challenges of our country. You see, when politicians come to the airwaves, and the only thing they talk about is being critical of this person and that person, it doesn't help you appreciate the core challenges. Many people across this country say, Liberia, what is the problem? Why can't we develop? This show is about discussing the issues of our country and proffering clear solutions so that you have the tools that you need for who you need to make president. So as Simeon Freeman, my name, I'm the political leader of the MPC, proffer myself for the post of president of Liberia. I am not just coming to the table saying I want to be president. I'm coming to the table discussing the challenges of our country. You see, these are deep secrets. I gave you another deep secret. When the Simple Mankofe Hydro was built, it was 44 megawatt. But even during those times in the 80s, the hydro, whenever the dry season kicked in, you had limited power because the water level was grossly insufficient to turn the turbine and to also enable the provision of electricity. In the 21st century, several years later, the same river that was not having sufficient water to give us electricity, what did we do? We increased the capacity on that same river to now 88 megawatt. I don't know whether we're anticipating that water will come from heaven and fill the river, but then you notice during the drought, LEC could not provide electricity because we were looking at the same source, whereas we could have done something on the Mesorado River. We could have done something on the Dool River. We could have put a 10 megawatt on the Dool River. We could have put another 10 megawatt on the Mesorado River. We could have put a 10 megawatt on the Farmington River. We could have broken down our capacity and would have multiple sources of power. But we went back to the same source. It is that one-track thinking that is hurting. All right? So when that happens, it's going to hurt. You see? So that in this case, then things becomes better for us. So because we have that one-track thinking, what's happening? It's not helping us. You see? So that one-track thinking is one of the biggest challenges where we borrow money, then what do? We take that money and we spend it on certain kind of infrastructure project without necessarily evaluating and checking what the return on investment will be on that project. Then what happened? Over time, we are unable to borrow in the chunks in which we borrow originally, but then we are directly burdened by the old debts that have been acquired. That means current revenue has to service old debts that was borrowed probably, money that was borrowed probably 10 years ago, and then now any existing government desirous of borrowing will borrow in limited quantity, and they also borrow to execute infrastructure projects. We think those kinds of things are at the heart of the burden that we're carrying. So think about it. Your father borrowed $1 million and built a house. Then he leaves the house with you. This house, during the lifetime of your father, he managed to pay off $400,000 of the loan that he borrowed to build a house. He gives you a house, but the house has a loan of $600,000. Now, whatever income you have has to pay up maybe a $25,000 loan, $25,000 every month on that loan of $600,000. Then you two pass out and pass that same liability on to your son. So generationally, instead of the family prospering, one house that was taken by one grandfather several years ago, even though you own it, is still being paid for. That's the burden of debt that is really, really, really hurting us. You see? This is precisely what our challenges are. So we've been able to discuss the issue of taxation. We've been able to discuss the issue of debt. We've been able to discuss the issue of inflation. Tonight we're looking at expenditure approaches. What we borrowed that debt for and what we spent it on. Our expenditure curves are at the heart of many of our problems. So every new government that comes to power, or every government in power, has to do what? They have to take a significant chunk of the revenue to pay up an old debt. If you don't pay the debt, it gets called in. And if it gets called in, it's an even more difficult problem. It means you can't do anything else. So they have to take a significant quantity of money to pay up monthly, to pay up annually, to pay up interest, which then disable us from being competitive. These are the challenges. That's why countries that have made it, what do? Let's use China for an example. When China builds roads, China firstly builds factories in the area where she intends to connect the road from. So when the factories are built, then China comes to work and connect that productive center to a port or to a supply center. So if you're using the Chinese model, we take Nima County, we put up a 75 factories using the $264 million that we use. What we do, we maintain the road. So when we maintain the road, it means that the road is still drivable, is still passable, and it's a convenient passageway. Once we've created the jobs and the industries, then what do? In anticipation of a 15% tax will flow. Let's even be a little more moderate. and say, look, the 75 factories, they $5 million in terms of return on investment per year. If you multiply this by 75 factories, you're talking $375 million 75 factories would have made. If you multiply this by the tax rate we want to use of 15%, you're talking $56 million. If you're getting $56 million, even if you're getting $40 million in terms of a corporate income tax from 75 factories in Nimba County, you can now borrow, say, 200 million, 300 million, and you can take it for a shorter period of time. So you can take it for a 6 years period because you know you're collecting $40 million, which will then go towards road development. So you will go towards road development within that community and within that country. So you see the burden of road is already financed by economic activity within that place. That's precisely what approach we should be adapting. Because we are not adapting that approach, what's happening? It is hurting our economy, and every year we have these transitions. So imagine most of the debts that I read on the last show, all right? What happened? If you read those debts, millions of dollars, almost $300-something million that was borrowed, most of that money with the interest accumulated during the war years came to the $4 billion that was waived against Liberia about 2009 or so. Now, we already have borrowed about $1 billion, if not a little more than that. That money, any incoming government will have to deal with that $1 billion that's already on the book. Yes, the current government is paying the interest and they're paying the principal. Some of them are given with a moratorium. So moratorium means that they give you the loan and they say, pay this loan back. You can start paying 3 years from now or 5 years from now. So if that outlives this government, any new government coming in will have to begin to deal with that. So the question is, what is the money being collected, being spent on? If the money is being spent on certain kinds of things, for example, I see building a road from Robertsfield to Monrovia, the traffic from Robertsfield, we got less than 300,000 traffic coming from the Roberts International Airport. We also have a very nominal traffic in terms of cars coming from Robertsfield, the Habel area to Monrovia. The 2-lane road was good enough. If you want to do 4-lane road in our mind, it would have been good, all right? It would have been good to be able to, start from Doison, since the city has expanded up to Doison. You do a 4-lane road from there, but if you're doing a 4-lane road from the airport, it means that long term we're going to have a liability that any incoming government will have to pay for, which then takes away from the capacity of that government to execute certain other development and to also borrow. So you see, these are some of the things that has to go into the expenditure mix for any country. Historically, most of the money we collect, Mr. Kohler, please send the link, it's 7:35, so we can have people to call. Most of the money we borrow, typically, most of the money we borrow has gone, like I said, into projects that brings absolutely nothing back over a long-term period, and then that burden of payment hangs with us. And then we have to take it forward into the future. And because you're paying debt continuously, like the example I gave of you leaving a $1 million house with your children, but you actually have not in every respect completed the payment. Mr. Jackson, I'm adding you. Because you have not, or you please send a link again, Mr. Jackson. Because you have not completed the payment, even though you left a house, but then that house has to be continuously paid for. So even though there is a road from Monrovia to Ganta, which is drivable, is good, but because of the value and volume of economic activity in Ganta, economic activity in Banga, that is not equivalent, that is not substantive enough, it means the burden of that road burden on the people of Liberia for the next 10 from being as competitive as they should be. These are some of the problems affecting many countries across not just Liberia, but Africa. So today, many of us are burdened by debt. Many of us are burdened by inflation. Many of us are burdened by high taxation. Many of us are burdened by poor expenditure in infrastructure. And this is a serious problem. So that's precisely what the problems are. We'll open the line now, keeping true to our word to give you a chance to call. If you don't call, I will just go on with the deposition. So the lines are open, 0770-000-754. If you ask any question now, you kindly have to come back on Wednesday when I'm back here to answer those questions, because I like to give people a time to call whenever I open the line. 0555-000-754. Call us, have your say, make your suggestions for us to be able to listen and to also give you some of the answers that we think you need. So look, it's clearly an African problem. African governments, the way we spend our money, I showed you. Every step of the way, all that we collected for revenue was never spent. Mr. Kole, are you hearing me?
Yes, you're allowed.
Good. So every step of the way, every cent collected from our revenue was never spent on. If you have a caller, you let me know.
I have a call. Hello, your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Yes, hello, your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Simeon, and I'm calling from around the ESWA junction.
Okay, Mr. Weir, you can go ahead. You're allowed.
All right, thank you so much. I started following your show lately, but I'm moved by your analysis.
Okay.
And I think those analyses are good optional analysis that have been provided. But when we want to find out, for example, let's say we want to invest the money being borrowed, what can we particularly invest those monies into that will be able to be able to return, generate the necessary income to pay off these loans in a time frame that is borrowed, so that the next government of generations to come don't have to be responsible to pay, to carry on unpaid debt. So first, I would suggest that research be conducted. Say, for example, the analysis report that 75 factories in Lima. What will those factories be producing that will be able to raise 40 million, for example, or 40,000 per annum? So what can we produce in these factories or these industries that will lead the road so to be able to raise the money? What is the research that is done that will tell us that if you invest in this particular industry, if you open this particular factory, in a year or two, you're able to raise this amount of income. So those are, I think, those are some of the kind of research we should be focusing on, telling government particularly. These are sectors, these are industries, and research has shown that if you invest in these industries, if you invest in these factories, this is the return. So if you borrow money, be looking toward putting it to this place so that when you link the road to connect, then we can raise the money. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's a very brilliant question. I'll start to answer, but if people call, then I'll just have to give them their way because it's time for callers. So I'll just jump straight into what you just said. What kind of factories? Let's take, for example, rice. Mr. Kola, as soon as you get a caller, you just take the call, okay? Let's take rice, sir. Rice is a little over $260 million per annum industry in Liberia. So we spend $260 million importing rice to Liberia. So if we were to invest in rice growing, rice processing in Nimba, for example, multiple factories producing that, imagine we could be able to generate significant resources. That's one thing to look at. Sugar. We spend a significant quantity of money importing sugar to Liberia. Think about it. The bread you eat has sugar. The salt drink, sugar. The tea you drink, sugar. Sugar is a big industry. So if we invested in sugar factories or sugar farming and processing, we will be able to export that and we'll be able to grow that. One of the most important things, before I even go on with the list of products, I'll tell you that because we're spending this money, you say you've been following the show, because we're spending this money importing these things, when we start to produce them locally, it means we wouldn't have to import them anymore. You see? So one of the things would be there's something called our trade deficit or current account balance. What we'll be doing will be reducing that. So all of the demand that we have on our currency, we need US dollar to import. We need US dollar to import. We need US dollar to import. That US dollar that we need to import, we wouldn't need that anymore because the products will be generated locally. We go for the corn. Corn that is overlooked. Corn is maize. Corn is ethanol. Corn is malt. Corn is a vegetable corn industry. There are lots of things that come out of corn. Corn flour and all that. So it means we can have multiple factories that will be generating millions of dollars just from growing corn and processing corn. We go for the cassava. I don't know if you know, but glue is cassava, starch is cassava. So imagine all of the starch spray imported to the country. So there is so much that can be done just, investing in the right industries in our country. If we took one county or we took, say, a chain of counties, let's say we took Bond County, go ahead, take that caller.
Hello, your name, where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Simeon. I'm calling from the branch of the Productive Business of Nigeria, Upper Power Mining Community.
Okay, Harrison, you go ahead. You go ahead.
All right, so I want to say thank you to Mr. Freeman for the analysis.
Okay.
They are all brilliant. But I just want to ask him a question since we are, discussing the issue of rural. I want to ask you, will senior government consider outsourcing some of the rural development projects to private companies and afterwards where they institute a toll system to get their money back? Thank you very much.
Okay,
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll just give you that answer quickly. Yeah, we'll definitely do that because that's one of the ways in which you push development. So once you've created capacity, so you can have a group of private investors, Liberians, or with a mix of foreign, to say, look, we'll build a road from Banga to Vahum, and they can put multiple tools on the road and get their money back. That's something that can happen. Some of the reasons why those things don't happen is basically because people don't trust the growth projection of the country. People have a challenge with a large youth unemployment across Africa. That's why in the white people country, in places like Europe and America, you have lots of private businesses building roads. In Liberia, that's something I'll be able to encourage. But even if you encourage it and people don't have the capacity, go ahead.
Hello, Paula.
Yeah, your name, where are you calling from?
This is Marcy. Let me say hello to my people in the diaspora. This is Simeon.
Okay, Marcy.
Thank you, Omar.
I always follow his show and I listen to him. What he said is true. When I was coming up in Maryland, we had a Mexico. We had a company called Mexico. They used to make their own sugar in our country. But when the time that company left, nothing is there done in Maryland. That company closed a long time. They never for coming up small in Maryland. And what the people say is true. If we're making our own sugar, our own things in our country, we're getting out of factory all over the place. At least the money we're spending out there, we're not spending too much. Play our own rent and we make our own food, send it out, and we're not spending more American dollar to go out and import things. And this is why things are getting high on a daily basis. So what the man say, and if I agree with him, we're afraid that What you say, let me put a few words in that way. So the tree. You shouldn't give one, let it go after back and fed out with the government and put on an idea. Maybe they will listen to it and this one thing and listen to it, this one thing. Now you think you can do EFCT. I will say thank you to you, let you consider. You shouldn't give up. I want to say on the show, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Omar. Thank you. Yes, Los Sucro used to, now this company in Maryland used to produce sugar. Yes, those things are happening. But right now, we need US dollar to import sugar. We need US dollar to import rice. We need US dollar to import petroleum. We need US dollar to import chicken wing. We need US dollar to import fish. We need money to import everything into the country. And whenever we borrow, we spend the borrowed money on certain kinds of infrastructure, which is a serious problem. Take the caller.
Hello, your name?
I'm writing the questions down.
Good evening to you.
Good evening, your name? Where are you calling from?
Good evening to you. Good evening to Honorable Freeman.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Puller. I want to know from Honorable Freeman.
Your name? Please call your name for the public. Your name?
Mohammed. Mohammed Khan.
Okay, Mohammed Khan.
Let me appreciate Honorable Freeman for your analysis.
Okay.
But like I said, if Honorable Freeman becomes to be our next president for this nation come next year, what would be his role if it comes to the issue of the flowing situation currently that's taking place within our country? Because for the police, if you look at the flowing situation that we're taking in our entire country, most of the countries and other world countries, the flood issue. And I want to know from our daddy on the Freeman, can you please highlight what's going to be his key impact on the flowing situation currently that's taking place within our country situation right now? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay, so I'm just typing that question, flooding situation. Look, but while we're waiting for callers, I'll just tip on some of these things, but I will answer your question in more depth on Wednesday. Tune in 7 p.m. to 8 on Wednesday when we provide these answers. But look, Bossman, you have flooding because some of those communities came about not through a planned way. Because of the massive inflow of people into Monrovia, so Dole community was created. It's not an organized community. Typically, Dole community was a swamp. Then what did we do? We passed a road through the community, and that road is high up. So what do you think happened? Because the road is high up, the water is not connecting. So the water will push back. So yes, you will have a lot more flooding. As president, I will just begin to answer this. So calls coming, but I will spend more time on it. As one of my key points, I want to spend annually at least $20 million annually. And what am I targeting here? $20 million annually, I'm targeting at least $10,000 per house. Let's put it 20 million, let's put it at 15,000 because of the new cost. $20 million. Let's take the new cost. $20 million divided by 15,000. That will give us about 1,333 new homes. Every year, I will build new cities, about $20 million, where we build 1,333 homes, 2 bedrooms each, laid out, organized, where you have at least half a lot. In certain instances, we squeeze 3 on one plot, on one lot. In certain instances, we squeeze 2 on one lot, and we build on high lands, solid lands. As is, unless you relocate those communities, nothing can be done about the flood. Go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening, your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Peter Mato. I call you from Chocolate City.
Okay, can
Hello.
you please get away from the noise?
Okay,
I will lose him.
Yeah, so the truth is, Bossman, unless you you relocate some of those communities completely, entirely relocate some of those communities. Nothing you can do. Then the roads that we built, take Lockington. We went into Lockington, we built a road. The road is high up. Typically, roads supposed to be lower, and the road supposed to have a drainage infrastructure to receive the water from the surrounding community. But what we did was we went and we built a road, and the road is elevated. So usually if you go around the world, you see the road is down, and the road receives the water from the communities, and it flows through the drainage. But what we've done is we built the road in these communities, and the communities are lower and the road is higher. So the water that comes in, the rolling water that comes in as it rains, where does it go? It goes right back. So it rises up because it doesn't have an exit. So what happens? In every respect, we have to build lots of new homes, and then we let you pay for it over a 30 years period. So this is what we'll do. If you already own a house, say in Claratown or Dole Community or Logantown, if the house is a makeshift home, we value it, we value the land that you own, we can give you a new house. Then what we will now need to do is to resurface those areas, and then the properties there, the land there can be resold with a whole new plan. But the truth is that whole across the bridge is a swamp. That's why you see the road leading across the bridge is always eating up. There is a need for a totally new structural re-engineering of that entire place if you want to create solutions. If you don't want to create solutions, if you want to do mythics, then every year you're going to have it. And the flooding is going to get severe because of all of this climate warming, this climate change, major issues that are unfolding across our continent. So because of all of these problems, if you don't solve the core problem, next year you're going to have a worse off situation where probably people will be thinking about relocating themselves. That's why the next 2023 elections are critical, it's serious, and we must look intently before we vote. We mustn't vote for rice. We mustn't vote for T-shirt. We mustn't vote because we are giving money. If they bring T-shirt, rice, drinks, we must eat them, and we must pick the candidate that has a clear vision of a brighter, better, more prosperous Liberia. Other than that, we're going to have these problems. So the issue of flooding, yes, we're going to have it for a long time. Somebody talk about the issue of building roads. Bossman, and I'm sure you asked that because you've seen that a lot in the West. Private companies, businesses come together and they build road and they say, okay, in 25 years, we're going to get our money back. But you see, they can build a road in America and Europe because they know that they don't have youth unemployment issues that could lead to instability. So in the case of Liberia, those things are reluctant. And then they have a strong legal justice system. So if you build a road, if I build a road, it doesn't matter if a new government comes to power, my toll booths are there. No representative or senator or governor official will go and pass through. It will all pay. He pays before he passes through the road. All right? So in every respect, that is the problem. All right? So when you have these kinds of problems, it is quite critical and it is very serious. So in every respect, once we can support our justice system, where the judiciary is strengthened, then the next thing we have is Liberians that have been in power under this industrialization scheme will be encouraged to invest in some of these roads. Everything cannot be a government arrangement. Under a Simeon framework arrangement, you're going to have lots of privatization. That's something we'll look at in the succeeding show. All right, you're not going to have an LPRC run by government. What is LPRC doing? It's just a tank farm. It doesn't have anything but storing petroleum. Why should that be a government business? You can see what we've done with the telecom sector. Because we gave the telecom sector to a private entity, which is what we're doing in our succeeding shows, you see that the telecom sector has created hundreds of thousands of indirect jobs. Think about the number of children, the number of people that are employed as a result of the telecom sector. One, we have at the telecom sector, we have you have lots of people doing Momo. You have lots of people selling trash cars on the street. Then you have direct employees that work with the firm. Then you have other associated services as a result of telephone services, data, and all that. So the truth of the matter is, the approaches we adapt can be the big difference between success and failure. So that's why you see we come to this show discussing the core critical issues of Liberia. But typically people are more interested in discussing this, discussing that. If we spend all of our time criticizing the current administration, we'll never actually get to know the true challenges of our country. And if this is the trend you take, it means that the likelihood of electing the wrong person is very high, because then we will never truly get to know what the issues of our country are. And what we try to do is to deviate from that path by creating a clear vision of the future, where we want to take Liberia, the outcomes we want to get. Somebody talk about what are some of the factors, so we'll just answer these questions now, since in fact we don't have a lot of callers tonight. There's 4 more minutes, so we'll just spend time on this. Like we're talking about sugar. If we invested in sugar, multiple sugar factories in places like River G, Maryland, Grand Cru, right? Where we invest in about 10 sugar factories. We could start from as low as 5 million, and we could go as high as 100 million. And those factories could scale up by themselves, but we could provide the first funding. If we were to invest in other types of factories, let's take the reed, the bamboo that grows around. Simple things like toothpick can be grown from those factories. There is so much that we can do in our country in terms of the possibilities. You know, our fishing industry, we import fish, yet we can grow the fish in our country, we can grow shrimps in our country, we can export them to the white people country. The other day I was talking to a friend in Texas. He said, look, I need 10 containers of kitili. And I said to him, he said, he said he buying 10 containers of kitili from Vietnam. And I said, but why don't you buy it from Liberia? You're Liberian. And he said, my friend, you call anybody in Liberia for 10 containers of kitili, they will tell you, send me the money first, give me time to put it together. He said, right now, you will be here. I'm going to call Vietnam. And by next week, 10 containers of kitili ready to be shipped to me. Why? Because they have the infrastructure. So the fresh and is going to be transported in these reefer container. The temperature is set, so it's not frozen, it's fresh. And so you see, because they have the structure in place, a whole industry of supply. So you can supply plantain, you can supply cassava, you can supply lots of things to the white people country because they want those things fresh, they want to buy it. You can supply potato, you can supply oranges. Let's even take the peanuts factory in our country. Whenever you're having your party, you're going to buy the small plantain peanuts in a cup. I think it's sold for $5 or something, you know, in a cup. Meanwhile, the double bag of peanut coming out of Lofa is about $10, $15 for the double bag. But out of that one double bag, you can get so much peanut. So under our Simeon Freeman presidency, we add value. By adding value, we change the conversation. We begin to generate money, and then prosperity comes to our country. That's precisely the vision we have, a very clear vision for the transformation of our country. I want to thank the many people on Facebook that comment, some of them favorably, some of them not so favorably. The many people that call, some of them favorably, some of them not so favorably. Musu in Clarendon, our very strong supporter. I'll be back in the country tomorrow, day after, and we'll try to visit with you. We want to thank you for your numerous support. We want to thank the many people that call and the many other people that do not call. I meet people who say, oh, I listen to the show and I'm inspired by it. We want to really thank you for your support. We appreciate what you're doing. We think by us working together, we'll be able to transform our country and create a better Liberia. I want to thank the 4 radio stations, OKFM, Capital FM, Banner FM, Sky FM for relaying this show religiously, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day. And thank our crew, Jackson, Cole, and James Freeman. I want to thank you guys and the many other members of the team that does the sharing on Facebook. We really want to thank you and have a blessed evening. It's now 8 o'clock. We'll be bringing the show to an end. and God bless. Bye for now. Jackson, see you on Wednesday.